Hey, I'm Evan, Head of Engineering for RMSTATOR. Today we're going to be talking about how to install our DC headlight and high output stator charging system conversion for the Honda CRF450X. I believe this fits from, I want to say 05 or so on up, and all the 450X models. Well, from whenever the first year of the 450X was, somewhere around there. And it's a really nice upgrade on these bikes. We have these very similar kits available for the CRF450X and for the YFZ 450 Yamaha ATV. And this is a really nice upgrade on these kind of dual sport dirt bikes that have a headlight, taillight, but kind of a weak charging system. The downside with these stock systems is that they run a split charging system. So you have a battery for an electric starter and you have a charging system for that battery. But the headlight itself, which you obviously rely on at night and could use some bright light, is powered directly off the stator using AC current from the stator. So you have a split system. And you really don't get the best of both worlds at all. You have a weaker charging system and a weaker lighting system. So what this kit does is gives you a higher output stator, an upgraded regulator, and it converts your lighting system over to battery power. So now you have a battery powered headlight that's brighter at all RPMs and just works much better than the original system. So it's a really easy install on these bikes. You don't even need to drain the oil if you don't want to. You can lay the bike over on its right side and you don't have to drain anything, but obviously we have it on the lift, we have it drained, and I have already installed the system here and I just kind of have everything set in place. So I'm going to go through and show you what to do, and you'll find it's pretty simple, and you can get this installed on your own bike and get out riding quickly. So to start, you want to go ahead and get your seat and gas tank and your, well, I guess we're on the left side of the bike, your left side panel removed, as well as go ahead and open up your air box. So I'm going to get all that stuff out of the way so we can see a little better. You also might as well remove your skid plate, which I have just hanging loose here, and your kind of case guard here. So I'm going to get all that stuff out of the way so we can look closer, and then we'll get started unplugging the stator harness and getting our stator done. Alright, so now with our gas tank and seat off, I have access to the connectors for the stator. So I need to get them unplugged and the wiring loose so I can pull the stator out with the side cover. So the two connectors for the stator are right here on this bracket. I've already got them loose, so I'm just going to remove them right here. And then you want to feed them. You might have to remove a wire clip here or wire tie, and I'm going to feed them back so they're loose and then pull them back down here out of the frame. Okay, so now I have my whole wiring harness loose. And again, like I said earlier, I've already installed our new stator here, so I'm just showing you how where everything goes and how to do it, but I'm not actually swapping the stator here. This bike was already used to take pictures for our print instructions, so everything's already on it. Okay, so I've got this loose. I'll let it hang down. We need to remove the shift lever down here, which I've already loosened. It's just an 8mm bolt that you can get to with a wrench right back there. So I'll get that out of the way. And if you were draining your oil drain plug for the crankcase is this big one at the bottom here. So I'm going to remove that. And I only have a couple bolts in here. They're all 8mm around it, except for that oil drain plug down here that was a 10, I believe. And then your oil filter cover right here, you'll find that one of the bolts, the outside one for your oil filter cover, is actually one of the stator cover mounting bolts as well. You'll see it's way longer than everything else. So remove that. And one thing I always do when I'm taking bolts out of a side case is just make a template on cardboard and poke the bolts through. Because you can see some of them are different lengths, so it's helpful to know where they go back together. Okay, you can get that out of the way. You can remove, good time to change your oil if you're doing it and get your filter out of the way. I already have this removed. And then you can pull your side cover off of the motor, and you're going to be fighting the magnets and the flywheel, so you might have to rock it a little bit. Okay, make sure when you take this off, so this bike had never had the side cover off and the gasket was really crusty. So make sure that when you take this off, just plan on replacing the gasket. It's just cheap insurance against leaks. And then you clean up your gasket surface really well. This one took some work to get clean because the gasket just did not want to come away. Okay, so we don't need to do anything else in here. You'll see your flywheel and your counterbalancer and oil pickup and all that stuff. We don't need to touch any of that. So obviously if you're changing the stator, you're going to put this on your workbench, but I'm just going to hold it here so you can see. So I already have our new stator installed, but to remove it, you've got 2 bolts here. I believe they're 8mm for your pickup coil, and they just come out and your pickup coil will come loose. And then you have 3 Allen head bolts here that hold the stator in place. I believe they're all 4mm Allen heads. So you undo all of those and your stator and grommet, wiring and everything will just lift out in one piece, really simple. And then you lay your new RM stator in place, line up your holes, the bolt holes, and make sure you have the wire exiting in the direction of the pickup coil. And then make sure you use Loctite on these. There's a lot of vibration in this bike and you do not want these bolts coming loose and hitting your flywheel. So use red or blue Loctite, get them all torqued back down, your stator in place and your pickup coil in place, and route your wires well behind the pickup coil and your grommet firmly in place. So once you have that all done, really simple swap on your workbench. Now we have all that out. Make sure you put your new gasket in place. You can use some, like I usually use some black RTV gasket sealer, just a real thin layer on both sides. But with the new gasket, that's not really necessary either. So make sure you get that nice and clean, your new gasket in place. Make sure your barrel pins that help locate the case are still in place. You got 1 on each side. And they can come out with the side case. It doesn't matter which piece they come out in, just make sure you have them both installed. 1 here and 1 here. Okay, then you're going to put your gasket obviously, and then put your cover back in place. Rock it around until you get the barrel pins to line up and it pulls in against the side of the motor. And reinstall all of your mounting bolts. I don't have the torque specs available here, but the service manual will tell you. And that's it for your stator change, very simple. Again, make sure you fill it up with oil if you did drain it, don't forget that. And obviously you're going to put your shifter back in place and you're done on the bottom end. You can put your skid plate and your case guard and all that back together down here. And then you're going to want to route your wires just like the originals were, which go up, I'm going to fine tune this later, but they go up roughly here. Oh, and one thing I forgot to mention, I took off the chain guard as well. I'm sorry. Should have said that earlier. There's a plastic chain guard here that covers the front, so I removed that to have better access to the side here. Okay, so I got all my wires routed back up into the original location, and they are going to plug back in to the harness connectors. And then you can use the zip ties and clean up your wiring to finalize your stator install. So very, very simple job. No special tools required. So now that we got that done, we're going to go over and look at the regulator side and do the regulator install. Okay, so now we're going to do our voltage regulator installation. So I already have the new one installed. Here's what your old one looks like. It's a little different shape. And it's mounted, it's kind of hard to get a great angle with the camera here, but the voltage regulator is mounted to the bottom of the airbox, right behind the shock, and kind of above your swing arm. So from this angle you can see the corner of it. So the original regulator is mounted, so kind of like this, and it has a tab on it with a hole. And there's a threaded stud that comes out of the airbox. So this just slips over the stud and has a 10mm nut on it to hold it in place. So very easy to remove. You just get a socket with an extension on it, and you can come at it right from this angle and remove the nut. And then you can get this guy out of the way. We'll talk about the connector in 1 second. You are going to want to unplug the connector, obviously, so you can remove it. So the new regulator has 2 ears on either side, and you can mount it either way. It doesn't matter. This regulator has 2 adjustable pots on it that we'll go over later. So I mount it with them facing up, so they're easily accessible with a long screwdriver through here if you want to make adjustments. It's not necessary. None of the adjustments are necessary, and again, we'll talk about what they do later. But I mount it with them up so they're easier to access, and I grab the inside ear and put it over the stud and then put the nut on it and tighten it up. Really simple. And then my wires can come right over here and run along the edge of the subframe. Okay, so I'm going to open up the airbox cover now and we'll look at the regulator connector. So the regulator connector, I'm going to get this red wire out of the way because you won't have this installed yet. Okay, so the regulator is connected right here with a terminal connector, 4-wire connector, and it's really easy to remove. It just has a little locking tab on it that you can lift up with a screwdriver or your thumb, and it just pulls right out. So it's keyed, it plugs in place, and it clips in place, really easy to install. So that's how you'll unplug it and then plug your new one back in just by sliding it in place. And it's kind of inside this plastic cover here. You'll notice this regulator's actually been modified, just in case you picked up on it. There's an extra wire coming out here, the yellow. This is because the owner of this bike has an hour meter installed, so it's tapped off of the stator wire to run the hour meter. So don't worry about that. Unless you have one installed, you won't have this modification. It'll just be 4 wires that plug right in. Okay, then that's really it as far as your regulator install. Really simple. And we're going to set up our next shot and we'll show you the wiring harness installation. But that's going to involve this extra white wire here with the female bullet terminal on it, so you'll wonder why that's hanging loose. That's what's going to go with the extra wires that are included with our kit. So we're going to set up the shot at the front of the bike next, and we'll show you that because there's a small modification you have to make to run the wiring to change your headlight over to battery power. Okay, so now we're going to make our wiring conversion here that changes our headlight over to battery power instead of directly off the stator power. So we're at the front of the bike and I've removed the headlight. Really simple. It's an 8mm bolt on either side up at the top of the headlight, and then it just lifts off some ears down here on the bottom. And then you're going to have to disconnect this blue connector here to remove the whole headlight assembly. And the connector is really simple, just a little locking tab inside that you can lift with your thumb or a screwdriver and pull the connector out, and that's it. So headlight's out of the way, and now we have this blue connector up here. It's a 3-pin connector. So what you want to do, we need to remove the blue wire in the connector. So what you do is inside the connector here, you look at the blue wire, see what side it's on, and then you'll see there's a little plastic tab inside right next to the terminal, and it's what clips the terminal into place inside the connector. So I'm not going to be able to see it from here, but I use a pick or a really small screwdriver, and you go inside and you can lift the tab gently with the tip of your tool. And as you do that, you can pull gently out the back, and the wire and terminal will release from the connector. So really simple to do. We're going to remove the blue wire, and then we're just going to tape it up to the side of the connector. So I'll do that later, but you're not going to be using this blue wire or terminal anymore, so you want to insulate it with heat shrink or just tape it up along the connector so it can't touch anything. Okay, then what you're going to want to do is look at the 2 wires that were included with our kit. We include 2 long red wires, and you'll see one of them has a male terminal on it and one of them has a female terminal on it. So you only use one of these. It just depends on the year. They changed the connector depending on the year of the CRF450X. So you want to look at your connector and see which terminal you need. That's the wire you'll use. So for this one, obviously I'm using a male terminal because that's what side of the connector it is. So what you're going to do then is take the red wire. So on this bike, I've already installed and ran the red wire along the bike, so it's already sitting here. You're just going to take your connector, look at which way the locking tab goes, and slide your red terminal into the connector in place of the blue wire, where it used to be, until it clicks in place. You'll hear a little click when the lock engages. And you can pull on it gently to make sure it's locked in place. So now that I have that done, I've changed my wiring for the battery-powered headlight, and I will tape up the blue wire and insulate it around the connector so it can't short anything out. And then you can go ahead and put your headlight back on. You can plug the connector back in and put the headlight back into place and your 2 mounting bolts, and you're good on the headlight. And then you're going to want to route the red wire that you just plugged into the terminal along the frame of the bike. So it's really up to you. It depends how your bike's set up, if you have any other accessories, but you want to route the wire safely and zip tie it along with other wiring or along the frame all the way back to the regulator. And then we'll show you in a minute, but the end of that wire will have a bullet terminal on it, just like this. And this is going to plug into that white wire with the female bullet terminal back at the regulator. So really simple. We'll go ahead and spin this around and we will show you at the regulator this connection being made. All right, so now we're back at the regulator connector right near the air box. And we've routed our wire from the headlight all the way back along the frame. You'll see this red wire coming here. I've got it tied up. And it's really simple. It's just a bullet terminal. And it's going to plug into this white wire with a female bullet terminal. That's part of our regulator. Then I'll slide the cover over. And it's going to go in here and be tied up along with the rest of our wiring. And that's it, really simple to install. So that's what handles converting your headlight over to battery power. And we'll try and get an angle here to show you real quick the adjustments on the regulator. So let me explain really quick. The way this is set up, you'll notice obviously these bikes have no key switch or any way to turn power on and off to the headlight. So what's really sharp about this regulator is that it has an internal relay that will connect your headlight connection, which is this wire. It will turn it on once the motor starts running. Once the regulator sees AC current flowing into it from the stator, so it knows the motor's turning, it will then turn on its extra output for the headlight. So it's great. You don't have to worry about a key, and your light will be running as soon as the motor starts. And then when you turn your bike off with the kill switch and the motor dies, your headlight will shut off. So you don't ever have to worry about draining your battery from the headlight staying on. So really nice feature. Now we're going to go over here and try and get a good shot. It's hard with the regulator installed, but we'll try and show you the two adjustment pots on the regulator and give you a quick overview of what they do. However, they're preset from the factory and they do not need to be adjusted, but a lot of people will probably wonder what they are, so we'll explain that. Okay, so we can see here looking at the regulator, I have it mounted with the wires at the bottom. So in this situation we have the adjustment pot on the right side here is the delay. So what that means is it adjusts the amount of time that the headlight will stay on for once the motor is turned off. So like I said earlier, when you start the motor, your headlight will come on. When you kill the motor, the headlight will shut off automatically, but there's an adjustable delay here to set how long the time is before the headlight turns itself off. And that can be adjusted by turning this with a really sharp tip screwdriver. And don't set it too long because you can kill your battery if you left the thing on too long. I haven't adjusted these out to their maximum, so I couldn't tell you yet what the maximum amount of time you can leave the headlight on for is. Up at the top is the voltage adjustment. So this sets the voltage regulation point. These are preset at the factory, so there's really no need to play with them. Maybe if they're set to about 14.5, 14.6 volts for standard batteries. However, maybe if you're running a lithium battery, you could play with this a little bit and adjust it a little lower. Other than that, there's not a ton of adjustment range and there's no need to adjust it, but you certainly can if you would like to. Make sure you use a really sharp screwdriver to make these adjustments because these pots can strip easily. Okay, so when you do any work on your charging system, you should check it when you're done to make sure everything's working well. So we have our RMSTATOR battery tester and charging system tester, but you can use a multimeter too, hooked up to the battery so we can see what voltage we're getting. We're going to see about 13.7 or so right now. Even though it says full, this battery's been run quite a bit today and not recharged, so we're not going to hit our peak voltage. The regulator will regulate up to about 14.6 volts at higher RPM as well. So we're going to fire it up and then I'll shut it off, and Chris will come around and show you the headlight delay that's a feature of this system we talked about earlier. Alright, looks good. We got a good working charging system, and now Chris will come around and you can see the headlight's still on after I killed the motor. And the delay is set roughly about 10 seconds right now. So you'll see the headlight kick off in a second. So actually here, Chris, stay at the headlight and I'll show you firing it up again. So you can see the headlight comes on again as soon as the engine starts turning over. So just with the electric start, the headlight will come on. Same with your Kickstarter, one good kick and your headlight will come on. And then, like I said, about 10 seconds as the factory set delay will shut off for you, so you never have to worry about a key switch or killing your battery. So that's it for our CRF450X system. I hope you have an easy installation on this, and you'll have a great bike for night rides especially now. Hey, make sure to like our videos and subscribe to the RMSTATOR YouTube channel. We want to keep doing new installation videos. Leave us comments and let us know what parts you'd like a video for. Let us know if you have any suggestions or questions. We're happy to help out. And always check out rmstator.com for our latest products and information.